Is this?
The Muscatine City Council in-depth session will come to order. We'll begin this evening, as always, with a roll call. Greg?
Councilmember Spread,
Present.
Phillips,
Present.
Bynum,
Present.
Shahade,
Present.
Nantfig,
Present.
Fitzgerald,
Present.
and Lorette.
Present.
All present, Your Honor.
Very good. Thank you, Greg. And welcome, everyone. Looks like we have quite a bit of stuff on the in-depth agenda tonight, and so we'll begin with item number 2, which is the CIAT and/or the Blue Zones update, and I believe that's probably Joni and Rich.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Appreciate to have the opportunity to talk on behalf of the Community Improvement Action Team. We do have a lot of really interesting things that are happening, and it's kind of exciting when we're working with young students from the University of Iowa. I'd passed out earlier, you should have in front of you the Iowa Initiative for Sustainable Communities. And this is a project that we've been working with the university since about January of last year. We work with Dr. Chuck Connolly. He's the director and professor for urban and regional planning. And they have a unique program that they've put together to have university students work with communities to get hands-on experience. And so from that, and as a follow-up to Andrew Fagman's as far as plan, his comprehensive plan, we've come up with a number of different projects for these students to work on. And this is kind of an update of where those projects are and how we're progressing to date. There's 13 different projects that these students are working on. Majority of these students are graduate students, and they're graduate students to where this is their only school work. They have no other classes. They're working strictly on these projects for the city of Muscatine. So they're dedicated to it. It's part of their thesis. It's part of their graduation that they have to have completed. Some of them are being done as year-long projects, starting this fall and going all the way to next spring. They're done next May. Some are starting just this semester only, and some of the teams are actually working next spring only. So we got quite a diverse group that we're working with. So I won't go through all the detail that's in your write-ups, but just kind of want to hit the high points of what these teams are doing and the good that they're doing. I think probably the key thing that's the hit on is that all these students are doing basically homework for the CIAT, looking at some of the research, what the community is looking for, what the cities want, what's the best thing, best practices. So they're doing a lot of the homework at a very minimum cost. Typically, the only cost to the CIAT that we're looking at is just transportation for some of the students coming this way. And to date, we haven't seen a bill yet.
Rich, you might quickly, for the benefit of the viewers, explain what the CIAT is.
CIAT is a group of city as well as members from the community to put together, appointed by the mayor, as a community improvement action team. And it's just that, to find out what we can do to improve the community and then take action. So how do we make these things happen? How do we move them forward? How do we make things progress and get them completed? In the past, some of the major projects that were completed with the riverfront, moving the railroad out down to the south end of town, redoing the park area. Those are some of the projects that the CIAT team has worked on in the past. I just got on board here a little over a year and a half ago, and as a co-chair for the group with Gary Carlson. So trying to look at the next phases of different projects that we can work on. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what some of the histories. Our first group to talk about is the Connectivity Master Plan and Wayfinding. This project is, they've done some demographic work. They're looking at some transportation within the city. They're looking at some other cities, that how they do their connectivities, or what do they do. So they've looked at Burlington, they're looking at Mason City, Austin, Minnesota, cities that have rivers going through them, cities that are somewhat close to the size of Muscatine. They're looking at doing some interactive websites to get public comments. That's up and running. They haven't launched as far as publicly yet, but they want to get all the bugs worked out, so they're doing some public comments on a website. They're working with a pedestrian bike plan that includes sidewalks, trails, wayfindings, looking at different applications that they can do and signage. In fact, kind of a neat one, they do have a wayfinding smartphone application that's on its way. that they're going to be able to do some things with a smartphone. When somebody's coming into town, they get onto the app. They can look at what's going on for activities. I'm not sure what all is part of it. They're getting the bugs worked out of that, but would have a wayfinding thing that's actually on the phones. So it's one of the activities that this particular group was working on. Gets kind of exciting with some of the new technologies that they're doing. They're also looking at public engagement, not only for the city in general, but also the Hispanic group, the community. So they're doing some things to try to bring everybody together on what we can try to do more for the community. So they're doing some different things. They're looking at the school zone, sidewalk, safety, outreach programs. And as I go through a lot of these projects, they're also very closely tied to blue zones. So we're actually leveraging back and forth blue zones and CIAT. The second project is Mississippi Riverfront Redevelopment Plan. This is kind of taking the next step of what's from what the downtown or the Mississippi River project was and see what's the next steps, what else can we do, what else does the community would like to see. And so they're doing research, they're doing surveys. In fact, the survey went out this week. Hopefully everybody saw the survey and hopefully everybody filled one out so we can get a lot of responses back from that particular survey. But they're looking at what's the best that we can do with the riverfront, and then more importantly, how do we tie it into the downtown? You know, right now with the road going through there, with some of the projects that's coming down the road, hopefully with the corridor project, Mississippi Corridor, we want to make sure that we tie the two together. Along with that, the projects that's coming down, the possibility of having the grants to do the facade on the river side of some of the buildings. So they're looking at what can we do on some of those things, or what's some of the ideal situations that we can try to improve. So they're doing some of those projects. They've been here a number of times. This particular group's been here over 12 times doing some studies. Some of it, they're just going down in the park and looking at what cars, where are the cars from? What states are they from? How many are out there? They're interviewing people walking up and down the city, how they're using the park and what do they like, what they don't like. So they're doing a lot of that type of research. They're going to come up with some ideas and then present that to us. This is a full year-long project. We present it to us next May. So it's just giving some ideas and just see what those creative ideas might be. The next one is actually coming from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. This is an honors rhetoric class. I wonder what's rhetoric got to do with what we're trying to do in Muscatine. But this is kind of a unique one that's tying in with the other two that I just talked about. These are a number of students, they're honor students, that are actually going to be putting together podcasts and YouTubes talking about to the people of the community of the positive things that we're bringing to the community, tying in with what the riverfront's doing, tying in with the connectivity and the trails. So they're going to be doing these different podcasts and interviewing a lot of people, get them on the websites, get them on the city website, get them on the chamber websites, get it on the University of Iowa's website. So we can have a lot of places to where we can go and keep it positive. And then they're also working with East Campus. They're going to work with East Campus to make this a sustainable project, to have these short blurbs of information that can be continuous and not just for these students to start it, but having it go on and on for a lot of, as we complete and work on some of these projects. So there's basically two major groups out of that with about 6 subgroups, so there's quite a few students working on that particular project. The population workforce survey is, this one is coming from the Tippie College of Business. This is from the Marketing Institute. These are, again, graduate students working on some of these projects. This one is where they're actually doing some data collection, doing surveys. The surveys have gone out to over 300 responses already that they received. And that's got some interesting information coming back out. They've also found 160 people that would be interested in working with them on focus groups. So we can actually get face-to-face with individuals and talk about different projects. So they're going to be doing some of those things. The one note that's of concern from the survey that they've already found out, that 72% of the respondents are contemplating moving from Muscatine in the next 5 years. And that's one of the things that this project they want to work on and make sure that does not happen. But it's that kind of information that they're trying to pull together for information. Again, the homework that we need on understanding what we need to do better, or what else we can improve for the city of Muscatine. We talk about the branding of Muscatine as the next one. Some of the marketing students will also be working on branding. This is taking the information from the survey from the group that's happening this fall. The spring students will take that information and then help understand how we can improve our branding of Muscatine in general. Looking at everything that's been in place, what else can we do, or is there ways we can improve what we already have? What's the best avenue to pursue? And they're going to help us and come up with some ideas. Now, not to say that if we use them or not use them, but it's going to give us some ideas that we can explore further if we want to. And those are some of the things that those students will be working towards. We also have the School of Art and Art History, the Art Shares program at the university. They're going to be doing a public art project and looking at some things that they could possibly do on this end. This particular student is working with the Art Shares, the University Sustainable Communities, Melanie Alexandra and Laura Legis, trying to come up with 3 or 4 projects that can be community-based, could be positive for the community that ties in art. Project looking at the water control plant and something maybe of a fountain of some sorts out of recycled material. Trying to get something that they can dress it up as a way that they can work with the art students to put some pizzazz in some of these things. They have 1 or 2 large public art pieces that they're looking at could be permanent, may not be, not sure how that's going to look or where that's going to come into play yet, but that's something that they want to pursue, something that's a little bit larger than some of the other projects. They're looking at smaller kind of pop-up art projects that might pop up throughout the city. If you've been to other communities where sometimes they might have a pig that's coming around, different businesses sponsor a pig for an art project, and students come and paint them in different colors. Just different things along that line that I've seen throughout the community, and that's what they're doing, looking at what other communities have done and bring that to the table. And then Earth Day, they're looking at some events on the Earth Day that we're inviting children to make flower pots and then help plant those and color those pots and put those throughout the city. That's another idea that they're working on. Again, that's just some ideas they're exploring, trying to come up with different things and then see about how that might work going forward. And the spring projects that's working on, not to steal any Joni's thunder here as far as on Blue Zones projects, but the university students are going to be working on the restaurant certifications this spring. We had some of that done in the past and going to continue working on how we can improve the restaurants' menus to make them more healthier, make them more Blue Zones to where we can qualify more restaurants in the community. We also have the College of Engineering senior design students from Civil and Environmental Engineering. They'll be working with the city staff on looking at how we can take the Northeast Commercial Development Plan. If you remember, that was done by Snyder and Associates a few years ago, creating the land use infrastructure plan. They're going to be looking at what's been done since that was in place and the development that's in place and updating and say what else or where else do we need to do and looking at that Northeast corridor on making continuous improvements. So it's an opportunity for those students to look at in a broader sense of what else can be done. So they're going to be doing that this spring. Also working with the engineer students on a regional water detention plan. This kind of follows up the project that was just completed on Mad Creek on looking at how we can build some retention ponds and different things for future growth, making sure we watch where the water goes and how we can handle the flood in case there's heavy rains or where it might go. So they're going to look at some engineering, looking at hydraulics and different things, that hydrologic and different things that they can do with the water. That's basically what that group will be working towards. We also have, as a follow-up to the connectivity team, there'll be another one coming this spring that's going to look at the recreational trail systems on what else can we do to tie the trails all together. But this will be engineering students that will help design the ideal trails as well, and bridges and different things based on where the locations might best fit, and help that further the process on getting those trails and what it would look like and how it would come together. So the students will be working on that from the engineering side. And to wrap them up, we have the downtown river-facing facade design project. This one's not etched in stone as of yet with the students. It's a matter of looking for a couple of architect design students at the University of Iowa that would like to pursue this project. We also are looking at possibly a professor that would help manage those students and oversee the projects and look at some design work and improvements to the downtown and the facade. So a continuation of the development and the riverfront development team. So it's the next steps of that team. And then the last one is actually, it's a unique combination if the university can get it put together. It's working with the Iowa State University Design and Landscape Architect, along with the University of Iowa's Iowa Initiative for Sustainable Communities. them working together as a team. And the main reason for that is the University of Iowa does not have a landscape architect school. So we're going to look at using Iowa State's, and then they would help in design of a dog park with the actual design of a layout for a dog park, and then also the best practices that we can utilize for the park on what's the best to use for how to handle it, how to maintain it, how to keep that at a minimum for cost as well as maintenance. And that kind of wraps up where we're at, Mayor.
Council, anyone have questions for Rich? Great.
A lot of this stuff meshes with our goals, and
Super. You bet. Great. Look forward to it. It's a lot of excitement coming up.
Rich, just one thing, and you've mentioned it before. I think it's important to note that, with all of these projects, not only you, but the students are looking for ways to make them sustainable. Like you mentioned, the dog park.
Absolutely.
So that it's not a,
Yep. Everything is to look at it as a sustainable, long-term, so it's not to come in here, drop in, and go. They're going to help us understand what it is that we need to do and how do we make it last long-term. At minimum cost, minimum piece of what it's going to take, but also get the most value out of it.
Rich, is there any way to put a dollar value on the services that they're providing?
That's a good question. It'd be substantial. If you had to do some of this research with a marketing firm, it's a lot of dollars just on the market research that they're doing. For surveys, focus groups, that's a tremendous amount of dollars. Student-wise, I haven't gotten a full head count of how many students that we're looking at, but it could be probably in the 60 to 70 students on these projects coming to Muscatine, working on all these different things that we have going. So it's a lot of manpower, and each one of those students or those groups have professors that oversee the projects. And each of those professors that oversee the projects, as well as with a team lead on those projects, works with somebody here in the community that is also a team lead here in the community. So we have usually a chair and a co-chair for each one of these teams that the students and the professors are going to be working in contact with. So they're not here doing things on their own. They're working with community people to make sure we have the things going down the right trail, that they're not going down somewhere else that they don't need to be working on, that they stay focused. And I think that's important so we don't have a lot of things just happening and come up with ideas that we know it's not going to work. We want to make sure we keep them on path. Yep.
Anyone else, Council?
I was just going to ask him, have you coordinated with Randy with these recreational trails? Have you
Absolutely.
received his input?
Yep, absolutely.
He
Yep.
has good
Yep.
ideas.
He's got great ideas, yep. So we're going to help him push those further
Good.
down the road, yep.
So it will be fair to say, I hope the CIAT will get a B grade, but the student will get an A grade at the final exam.
There you go.
So that would be fair and
Absolutely.
good, so.
Yep, we can handle that.
Yep,
We can
that's
handle
great.
that. Yep,
Thank you, Rich.
thank you.
Thanks, Rich. And Joni Axel with the Blue Zones update.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As you might guess, I am not here to start from scratch with our Blue Zones discussion with the City Council. It is fun tonight, though, to listen to all that was going on with the CIAT and the students, and the Blue Zones project, as Rich mentioned, is involved in that, many parts of it. What was really less fun, I think, was to sit here and watch you and figure all your heads are going now, how much is that going to cost the city? How much is that going to cost the city? And by the time we combine the city ideas and those which the Blue Zones is also graciously offering and weaving in, I would just say that there is some cost to some of these projects. It is really kind of, most of it is coming from this help that the staff is giving us. I don't think we've occupied all the time of your city staff, but they've been wonderful with the Blue Zones projects, and I'm sure that's true of the CIAT. So we would be sympathetic and thankful for the great work that the staff has done with excellent counsel, a lot of good direction, that kind of expertise that you can only get if you've got feet on the ground in Muscatine, Iowa. So we appreciate that. And we are sympathetic to the fact that some of our improvement ideas do cost quite a bit. But we also have, we're not in a position to make any announcements about sustainability, but we are expecting that to be the outcome. And we're also expecting wonderful private-public partnerships in all ways. So that you can't hold me to that, but I promise to come back and say it again. So we should be able to go down this path together. For the Blue Zones part of my discussion tonight, I am going to try to do, I think you've already gotten one of these. It's kind of a quick little monthly survey, not survey, a monthly summary of the Blue Zones activities as related to the city policy, the community policy part of it.
It's in your packet.
And it was in a packet, one or another packet, I think.
It was in your council packet on the website.
I'm just looking at it.
Yeah, it's online.
That's what I wanted to say.
I won't go over all of that tonight. I think that those are all done in sort of a bullet point format, which the top part of it says, here's what the city's working on right now. The little box over to the right will regularly keep in front of all of you some of the projects and actions that's still to be done. The thing that I need to talk to you about tonight, just quickly, is that last time I was here, I told you we were moving into the rigorous stage, and now we're moving into the validation stage. And for all you know that this is a measurement project, and so we are trying to be measured and to be certified, but by doing certification, we are being measured. And so there are some validation tools and some validation outcomes that we want to achieve. And so you will see perhaps a few more policies presented to the council meetings forthcoming. And so I just wanted to warn you a little bit about that, and Greg will try to make us consolidate. But in the end of the day, we will have some policies for you to consider with respect to even things like farmers markets and breastfeeding policies for the city and the city buildings. So there are many to come, and we have a period of operation till July 30th, so we're going to try to present as many as we possibly can before that. I think you've already looked at this in the big picture, but now we have to drill down a little bit. Then the last thing I would say is that we have on your agenda tonight are two really, really important things that I know that you're thoughtfully considering favorably, but there's been a lot of work put into this, and one of them is that word complete streets. It's kind of a street for all users, and I think that this is important for not only all the CIAT is doing, but all that the Blue Zones is trying to do, to make our community be livable and, kind of apply and be available to all users of our streets. So we're certainly cheering loudly for that policy. And then also, I know that you're going to have an update on the Cedar Street project, which I don't have any details on tonight, but I am saying that Cedar Street belongs to all of us, and it will be a wonderful, wonderful improvement. So thank you very much. I'd be glad to answer any questions, and I promise to come back. I know I need an invitation first, but I'll try to wiggle one out.
Anyone, council?
Thank you.
Thank you, Joni.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, review of floodplain ordinance, Andrew Fangman. Hi, Andrew.
Oh, that probably helps if I turn that on. There we go. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'm going to do a quick overview of some forthcoming changes to the flood insurance rate maps that'll be taking effect this April. And all this goes back to the certification last year of the island levy, which is the levy that protects the portion of the city approximately south of Hershey Avenue. As part of the process that we went through to get this levy certified, a detailed study on the internal drainage was done, and what the internal drainage is how the water drains when the river's high and ponds behind the levee. And so more detailed data than was available before was generated as part of this process, and that was submitted to FEMA. And then they've taken this and revised the floodplain maps. And what's come back is overwhelmingly positive for the community. We're going to see a significant shrinkage in the flood zone of south of Hershey Avenue. Essentially, in the areas protected by the island levee, we will no longer have any structures left in the 100-year floodplain. which has some significant impacts on both homeowners and businesses. We had a fair number of homeowners that were forced to buy flood insurance by the 2011 changes to the floodplain maps because that's what their lender required them to do. And now that requirement removed, and the other benefit to property owners in this area is they'll no longer be subject to being in our floodplain zoning district, which has some significant restrictions on the land use that's allowed. And so I'll just kind of go over the set of maps to kind of give you a quick overview of how it's going to change. And so what you'll see on the map here, and hopefully you can all read that, is yellow and red areas. Everything that was, the yellow areas represent what's currently in the floodplains, and the red areas represent to what it's going to shrink up to. And this area here, which is showing the area around Kent Stein Park, is one where we're going to see some of the most significant change. As you can see on the map here, we had a fair number of homes in and around the Kent Stein Park that were in the floodplain, and now they're going to no longer be in the floodplain. And the other thing I'll point out here is the area south of Mustard Street, which we've kind of long seen as a natural area for expansion and industry, is now no longer in the floodplain. So that removes a significant hurdle. So kind of moving south along here, you kind of see that it significantly shrinks up to essentially where it now only is the slough and the gravel pits and a few other isolated areas. You can kind of see here that we don't have anything no longer in the Progress Park area. And then around here you can kind of see the airport area. We're removing some homes on Sherrill and Reynolds Avenue from the 100-year floodplain, so that's a benefit to residents down there. And it dramatically shrinks at the airport. And so what FEMA requires is that we in our ordinance reference the most recent floodplain maps. And so at the next meeting, I'll be starting that process by bringing an ordinance. So we'll have this all in place by April, so everyone can benefit from these changes. So any questions on this?
So what,
Andrew? I have one just on that first map, that, just curiosity question. Along the railroad tracks there, is that just a low elevation, that little sliver there?
Kind of behind the, yeah, I would assume so.
Okay.
so why, I mean, if you look at the flood map that we did of the south end, if there was a breach in the levee, you use that information. It basically covered everything that's yellow. Why?
Right.
What changed
Well,
that now we're going just to basically the slough area
Well,
and low-lying areas like that?
What this assumes is the levees hold. The technical designation for everything that's not in the 100-year floodplain is out of the floodplain protected by a levee. So what this flooding was from was what they call internal drainage. So when the river's high, the water that falls in this area can't drain into the rivers and it backs up. And so this is where it would back up to. So it's that type of flooding. This wouldn't be flooding that came off the river
So the yellow is a 100-year floodplain,
currently.
but protected by a levee.
Right, and so it'll be, in April next year, it'll be reduced to where the red is protected by the levee.
Okay.
The significance of that, Phil, is that by law, a federally insured lender must require flood insurance if we're going to make a loan in somewhere on any of those properties that are presently in the yellow zone. That requirement goes away on April 16th.
And
However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have flood insurance.
That's,
You know, if the levee were to breach, there's a need. The difference is the rate you pay.
right, yeah, okay.
So, and some folks learned that the hard way in 2008 in Columbus Junction. They thought they were protected by a levee. And there were some significant
and-
losses because when the levee broke.
This would need to be an educational thing for the residents in all the yellow area, because they suddenly get this notice, well, you're no longer really technically in the floodplain. And they go, I could drop my insurance then.
Well, and the other issue that's been longstanding is that it only matters if you had a loan on your property. If your house is free and clear, you didn't. There was no one telling you had to have flood insurance.
Right.
Will the public, of the people that own homes in that area be given a
Individually
choice, or be told that they now do not have to have the flood insurance?
I'm not sure. I can tell you, a lot of these people were first put in when we revised all the floodplain maps in 2011, and I can tell you that their lenders were right on them to go ahead and get floodplain insurance. Whether it works going the other way, I can't say, so I think that's one of the advantages to presenting that here. I think this is a good thing for information to be getting out in the community, and the one that'll directly impact the city is we had a couple structures in Sunset Park that were, if you can kind of see on the map, I think there's 1 or 2 buildings that were caught in the floodplain, and then they'll be removed from that too, so there'll be a benefit to the city from that. But I think that is a good thing, that the word should get out there so people can, when April comes, that they can acquire the lender and make sure if, you know, they can get relief from this if they so choose, that they can take that
Will
option.
the city be putting out that notice,
No.
or FEMA, or who?
Perhaps FEMA. There's no requirement in the code for the banks to do it. There's no requirement
They
in the code for the
didn't-
city to do it. There's,
Okay.
Council, anyone else have questions for Andrew?
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Item number 4 on the agenda, a short time ago, the city of Muscatine was awarded a community development block grant. Here to update us on that information is Steve.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, I'd like to begin by introducing the council. Those of you who haven't had a chance to meet, Adam Thompson is a new member of our staff replacing Jim Rudisil. And Adam comes to us via one of our major public universities in the state of Iowa, and I won't get into that tonight because I don't want to start that debate here. But it's the one that has a lot of black and gold associated with it, if that helps you. Anyway, Adam has his 4-year degree in engineering and his master's in urban and regional planning. We're pleased to have him, and he is already getting involved in a number of different projects with the city. One of them is taking over the direct responsibility for a lot of the ongoing portion of this grant we received for the Community Development Block Grant, rear facade restoration on the number 1 alley down here between Iowa and Cedar. And I've asked Andrew tonight to provide an update on where we are with that program, and we will be meeting with the property owners, but I'll turn it over to Adam.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Mayor and council members, for allowing me to speak for you tonight. I am happy to be here. I got my 2 months under the belt last week, so still going strong. And I'm actually a product of the sustainability program at the University of Iowa, so I'm familiar with much of what they're talking about here. So as Steve said, I'm here to give you an update on our CDBG, our Community Block Grant project for our downtown revitalization. As you know, our project area is the 100 and 200 block of 2nd Street, and primarily the alley portions. So as Steve said, we're looking at the rear and side facades. Some elements of this project is removing the overhead power lines and communication lines, placing those underground and connecting them to the building. Power and water will be responsible for taking the overhead lines and placing them underground. The property owners are responsible for preparing their buildings to receive the underground utilities. Some additional elements are the facade restoration repairs to the backs and sides of the buildings. We'll also be doing deck, doors, and window repairs to the buildings that desire and have a need for that. We'll be tearing up the alley to do the underground utilities, and the city will be repaving that as a contribution to the project. We're also looking at ways to incorporate sustainability in this project. We're looking at sustainable ways to manage stormwater through infiltration practices. We're also going to be looking at ways to do trash collection. As you all know, trash is collected every day during the week, and we want to, look at some opportunities that we have to make that more efficient for the city. And really, we're looking at this 2 blocks of the downtown as possibly being a model for how we want to handle other parts of the downtown area and how we want to handle activities in the alleyway. To give you an update on our status, as you know, we submitted a competitive proposal to IEDA for a community development block grant. We have been conditionally awarded $500,000 in funding. We have submitted our environmental review to IEDA, and they are reviewing that currently. And we've also submitted our release of funds and hope to have release of funds next month. We have been working through the process of selecting design services and our design consultants. We feel that we have finally found a good candidate for this and hope to put forth a service agreement for approval in the near future. Looking forward, after we select our design consultant, we'll look to do design work, or a consultant will look to do design work over the winter months in sight of a spring letting, and then construction to start soon after, and cross our fingers, we'll get most, if not all, of the construction done in the 2014 construction season. So that's our status, and I'd be welcome to take any questions that you guys may have on our project.
Are those alleys brick?
There is brick underneath of asphalt that is there now.
Are you going to try to save any of the brick?
There will be an effort made to save the brick and use it in some fashion, whether it goes to a facility where, citizens can come and take, brick, and I know there's a program for that. Part of looking in the alleyways, we'll be looking at possibly doing, permeable pavement or pervious pavers of some sort, so there might be an opportunity to incorporate some of that into it. I know with our architects and our design consultant that we look at, I'm sure that they will look at ways to incorporate those bricks, because they do have some unique historic significance that I think would be interesting to retain. You're welcome.
Anyone else, council? Very good, thank you, and welcome.
Thank you.
And next on the agenda, item number 5, update on the airport study. Is that you again, Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to just take a few minutes and update council as to where we are with the recent analysis of the runway and taxiway, the primary runway and taxiway serving the Muscatine Municipal Airport. As you know, we approved a professional services agreement with a nationwide firm to do what they call petrographic analysis of our runway to determine what has caused the failure of the runway. You also are aware that we've had a number of blow-ups in the runway, and that's a part of trying to find a solution to that. That study is now complete, and some of the preliminary numbers I'm sharing with you tonight, I have a 50-page document. If those of you that want to look at that with pictures, you're certainly welcome to look at it at your convenience. But in a nutshell, these are some of the recommendations, and I wanted to share those with you tonight. Interestingly enough, the pavements are in failing, not failed condition, but they are aging. The original runway was put in about 1993 and 1994. A life expectancy of that, according to FAA regulations, is approximately 20 years, so you can see we're at the end of the 20-year cycle. However, the analysis has suggested that we might be able to do installation of some joint material, expansion joint material at 500-foot spacings on that, totaling like up to 26 areas that we would hit. That's more than just putting in the material. It's about a 6-foot cut in each location running across the 100-foot runway and the taxiway to install that. So it is quite a project, and it's an expensive project. This would be covered, as you know, by 90% federal assistance and 10% local share. One of the things that comes out of the recommendation is that if we do the crack sealing, we can expect 3 to 5 years if we just do the installation of the joint material, expansion joint material. However, FAA suggests that if the pavement section is 15 years old, you should also seal that. So you'll see a reference in the spreadsheet. If you do the sealing with it, the price goes up significantly here. And now it gets to the point where the cost for doing this on aging surfaces at least has to be talked about in light of, is that money well spent, given the fact that I'm not sure the FAA would support us doing crack sealing of this material that will probably outlive the life of the rest of the pavements down there. So we are scheduled to have a conference call tomorrow morning with FAA to go over all these different options, but I wanted to put those in front of you so you can kind of see where we are with some. The first one really deals with either 16 or 26 expansion joints only, and that would just be making the cuts and putting the joint materials in. And you can see the map on the back where the lines run perpendicular through the runway. That will show you 24, 26. The copy didn't quite get the last two there, but the cost share to do that work. The second set of numbers gives you, which is number 3 and 4, gives you the ones with resealing with the asterisk provided that essentially goes on to say that that in that particular year, that particular situation, FAA does encourage you to do that if the pavements are 15 years or older. Ours are, and it's a question now whether that's a good investment for the cost versus what the overall condition of the pavement runway is. And then the final two are really dealing with reconstruction. The FAA will tell us whether they think this is a candidate for full replacement or not after our discussion in this analysis that we'll have tomorrow. But we have talked about the need to replace the pavement down there at some point, whether we make a recommendation to council that we consider that in FY15, again, a 90-10 split, or whether we go to the crack sealing. I think we'll get that information out of the FAA in our discussion with the engineers tomorrow, and we'll share that with you. But this is where we are right now. And then if we remove some of this pavement, we need to do some painting. You know, the approaches and stuff are all painted there for pilot safety, and we've not done that at this point because we were waiting on the petrographic analysis. And if we're going to replace the pavement, we don't want to spend the money to have that work done until we absolutely need to. So the things have to come together here a little bit so you get kind of a broader picture where we are. But the information is now available. It's complete. We do have some work to do down there. I don't think it's as serious as we initially thought it was. But the bad news is our pavements have reached their life expectancy, and we can try to do some things to delay that process if you want, but we want to have an opportunity to present this to the Airport Advisory Commission for their recommendation to council, and we will come back with a recommendation based on our discussion with the FAA, and you have the preliminary information in front of you now. So with that information, if there are any questions I can answer, I'll try to do so, but I don't have anything more to offer you than what you see before you right now.
Apparently not. Thank you so much, Steve.
Good, thank you.
Appreciate it. Item 6 on the agenda, Complete Streets Review. I believe that's you, Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to just give a brief overview of a policy we'll be bringing back to you for you to potentially adopt by resolution at the next meeting. A complete street is a complete street is a street that's safe and accessible and convenient for all users, regardless of transportation mode, age, or physical ability. Complete streets adequately provide for the needs of bicyclists, pedestrians, transit riders, and motorists. Every complete street looks different, with component features varying based on context, topography, road function, the speed of traffic, pedestrian bicycle demand, and other factors. Based on context, some of the common features of complete streets include things such as sidewalks, paved shoulders, bicycle lanes, adjacent trails, safe crossing points, accessible curb ramps, bus stops, sidewalks, bump outs at intersections, essentially the things you see on the list up there. A complete streets policy gives direction to how future projects will be designed. It directs that streets should be designed for all users and not just motorists. Though a complete streets policy has not yet been adopted by the city of Muscatine, complete street principles have been applied to recent major street projects. The Colorado and Cedar Street projects, which will be under construction very soon here, both would meet all the criteria that we're laying out in our proposed complete streets project. The adoption of a complete streets policy really doesn't represent a major policy change. Rather, it's more of a formalization and standardization of the way that the city's been designing its streets in recent years. Adoption of a complete streets policy would help implement a goal of the comprehensive plan, which was for complete streets. The adoption of a complete streets policy also will further the goal of the community becoming certified as a Blue Zones community. If adopted, the proposed complete street policy will guide the planning, funding, design, construction, and operation and maintenance of all new and modified streets within the city of Muscatine. The city will approach each transportation improvement project phase as an opportunity to create safer, more complete streets for all users. However, when certain conditions exist, exemptions will be made to the complete streets policy, and I'll just cover some of the exemptions to the policy. When non-motorized users are prohibited on the roadway, where severe topographical constraints exist, where there's an absence of current or future need for a particular type of user, where the cost is excessively disproportionate to the need or potential benefit of a project, where the project involves ordinary maintenance activities. This would be where if we're just sealing cracks on a street, we wouldn't use that as an opportunity to, do major add features to make it a complete street. Where there's an absence for a need for the accommodation of non-motorized users, and also where a reasonable and equivalent project already exists along the same corridor or is planned. So I think that's kind of a brief overview of the policy that you should have in your packet, so I'd be happy to answer any questions or concerns you might have about it.
Thank you.
I've got a couple questions. And I appreciate the issue of the exemptions, but does that imply that when we enter into a project, for instance, 6th Street today, we're doing a major reconstruction because of the sewer project, it goes sidewalk to sidewalk. If elements of that did not meet the complete streets project, does that imply that there will be a written exemption report of some kind? And what kind of a burden does that put on you?
Well, essentially it means is when we're presenting the project to council, we'll note in writing in the staff report that why, in this particular, why we couldn't follow the complete
And that's
street
helpful,
principle.
because it tells future staff and it tells future councils what we were thinking when we did that. I appreciate that. But you also go on to say that we're going to work with IDOT to upgrade to complete street standards. Has IDOT adopted a complete streets policy? We're going to hit a wall when we get there.
No, I don't think we're going to hit a wall. I think a lot of what we've been in communication and talking with the Mississippi Corridor project kind of falls right in with this. So I don't know if they formally adopted, but this is certainly something they're aware of in a direction that I think they're also moving.
And then the next bullet point talks about privately constructed streets, and before we accept them, they have to be built in compliance. Well, there are two matters there. There's the existing street, which automatically gets an exemption, I suppose. But if we're going to require or set that kind of a standard, shouldn't it be a matter of code rather than policy?
Well, kind of what this directs is when we revise, the zoning ordinance and code that will incorporate this complete street policies into that.
So I can expect to see that show up in the revised code?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there are 2 points. One talks about performance standards on the last page, and the other is a detailed implementation plan, both of which kind of blend together to me. But I guess it doesn't say when we could expect to see those. Is that a fiscal year 2014, 2015? Do we know? We haven't thought that far ahead about it. I mean, I appreciate the gesture, but...
Well, actually, some of this kind of ties back into one of the projects that the students have where they're working on connectivity and the pedestrian and bicycle master plan. I think that's kind of the first step in that, just to kind of see what their kind of findings on that is, and then we'll probably take that and develop that and further into kind of a plan for this kind of thing, assuming this policy is adopted.
Probably sometime during fiscal year 2014, we'll see something.
Right. Yeah, that's probably a fair statement.
All right.
Anyone else, council?
Adam, will the MAGIC database be of assistance here in trying to figure out how the trails might interconnect with?
Yeah, I think so.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Thanks.
Have someone in council chambers that would like to make a comment, I'm assuming about this last presentation. Mr. Harvey?
Alan Harvey, 2206 Oak Valley Drive. And since the CIAT and the Blue Zones update was presented tonight, plus the complete streets review, I thought I'd take this opportunity, fearing that I don't want to irritate the city staff or the council anymore, but I still have the desire, if you will, that the sidewalk that's going to be installed along Colorado Street extend clear to University. Right now, I haven't made the measurement, but I think it's a couple hundred feet short of reaching University. And when I saw that, I thought, why isn't it going all the way to University? Well, I talked to a construction manager, and he explained to me, and this is my words of what he said, that since this project was, the extent of the project was decided several years ago, and it's a federal state type of funding, that you can't make changes to the scope of the project at this point in time without basically starting all over, which is something that, would be impractical to do, and I don't think anybody, including me, would propose that. But I was just wondering whether, with the encouragement maybe of the Blue Zone people and the council, that we could get a commitment, not tonight, but get a commitment to at least seriously look at a separate project to complete that sidewalk, to extend that last several hundred feet from where the sidewalk stops on the Colorado project, to get it to the University, because there is a sidewalk on the other side of the University. Now, I realize pedestrian traffic across University isn't the most desirable thing, but the trail system crosses University now, and of course the trail system crosses Highway 22, so we are, I guess, dealing with those type of issues now. So I just want to, like I said, encourage the council and maybe the city staff to, is there some way we could put together a project, or make at least a moral commitment that we will complete those sidewalks somehow. Not as necessarily as part of the Colorado project, because that wouldn't fly with the state and the federal government, but maybe we could do that.
I'm sure we can have discussions to that effect.
So that's all I wanted
Very
to
good.
say. Thank you.
Sir. Item number 7, update on the Cedar Street project and roundabout. Randy and John?
How do you feel about that, Phil?
Don't want to know.
I didn't see the video yet.
I think it was pretty funny. They didn't, they did the video. I looked at the video, but it moves traffic. But what about pedestrians?
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Doesn't work, I think.
Cedar Street. This project has been ongoing for some time, to the point where it's developed its own history, its own little storyline. It started in 2007, 2008, when we were able to secure $551,000 of STP funds to overlay Cedar Street from Mississippi Drive out to the US 61 bypass. But the state was going to require us to do an architectural survey of all the homes between Mississippi Drive and Perham at the city's expense before they would make this money forthcoming. And we felt as though this was not necessary, and therefore we changed the parameters of the project to go from Perham out to 61. We did overlay Cedar Street from Perham to Mississippi Drive as part of the city's asphalt overlay program. In 2008, we held a kind of an introductory meeting to people in the area at the high school regarding this project. And as a result of that meeting, we further revised the parameters of this project because it became very clear that the traffic volume data showed that we have over 8,000 vehicles at that time, and this is 2008, that were using Cedar Street daily. Now, 8,000 vehicles per day may not be a lot in some places, but it is a lot in our community, and particularly in an area where it's an arterial street. It services schools, businesses, and residents. Furthermore, we saw that the data showed that between 2000 and 2008, we had sustained 107 accidents on Cedar Street, and most of those were rear-end accidents. As a result of this and the discussion that we had, we changed the focus of our project to that area of Cedar between Perham and Hauser, where we have a lot of traffic, we have a lot of accidents, and we have no sidewalks, and we have businesses and schools and residences. After that, we had some neighborhood meetings. The city engineer went out and talked to a lot of people, visiting with them about how we potentially could use that right-of-way area on Cedar Street, how it would impact them, just different thoughts that we would have. At May 12th, 2011, we came back to the city council with 6 different options for them to choose on which way they would like to go with the design of Cedar Street. The council at that time chose a 3-lane concrete surface with a 10-foot wide trail on the north side of the street. The estimated cost at that time was $3.7 million for this project. So, having given our directions on what to design, we moved forward, but at the same time, we began looking for alternate funding sources. We applied for state recreational trail grants, federal recreational trail grants, and the State Enhancement Project grant twice in order to assist with the funding for the trail. And we were not successful with any of these. In July of 2011, we awarded a contract for the extension of Papoose Creek culvert. And in February of 2012, we awarded the contract for the Cedar Street clearing. In October 2012 to the present, the utility companies, primarily Muscatine Power and Water, began the process of either upgrading or replacing their utility infrastructure along this road. They did this in advance of the major work that was anticipated. In November of 2012, the city, along with Muscatine Power and Water's assistance and the high school, was awarded a $138,000 grant from the Traffic Safety Improvement Program for the signals at Cedar Street and the high school. In 2012 and 2013, we were successful in increasing the federal STP money from $551,722 to $1,758,200. In February 2013, this year, we were anticipating a bid letting for this project. That did not happen for a variety of reasons, but it got pushed back. And although many of us were disappointed that it was pushed back, there was a silver lining with this. And that silver lining happened in April of this year. And it happened on a day when city administrator, city engineer, I'm not sure if Steve was along, myself, were with the Blue Zone group and their consultant, Dan Burden, reviewing different projects. When we got to Cedar Street, we were talking about this project and shared with them that we were still not comfortable with how we wanted to deal with the Cedar-Logan intersection. That you're going to have a trail on one side of the road, but not a real good way to get people across to the other side of the road, and all the other facts that went along that I've shared with you, and plus more. Sat down, people started making some drawings, circles, would it work, how would it work? And eventually, we were directed to Mr. Burden's engineering consultant, who had designed a lot of roundabouts, as well as DOT's consultant, who's also reviewed roundabouts. And both engineering firms said that a roundabout at this particular intersection was an option. So when we looked at options at Cedar and Logan, we basically had four that we know. One is the existing status quo, where you don't stop on Cedar Street, and people that are on the trail on the north side just have to take their chance to get across. We do not feel like this is reasonable, safe, and I don't think most people would disagree with that. Secondly, there is the option of installing a three-way stop. This has been discussed in the past. You're stopping people on a hillside. You already have 107 accidents, many of them are rear end. We have never really embraced this as a real option, and it's just one more stop on Cedar Street that we would be putting in. The third option was to install traffic signals. If we put in traffic signals here, you would have signals at Hauser, at the high school, and now at Logan, all in about a half-mile area, three of them stopping traffic. And then the fourth option was the roundabout. The roundabout, from our point of view, became a viable option because, first of all, it serves as a traffic calming device. It allows for pedestrian traffic to move more safely through the intersection. It slows traffic down without stopping them, and it provides for more efficient traffic movement. And just as an aside, and I just thought of this, without being a big name dropper, I did happen to be in Paris this summer with visiting my son, and we drove on that biggest roundabout that I've ever seen on the, Champs-Élysées, around the Arc de Triomphe, that must have had 16 different lanes with people on bikes and trucks and cars and everything else, and 40 different ways to get off of this thing. And fortunately, my son was driving, and I'm trying to count where you're supposed to get off, and everybody seemed to handle it. And they go through this every day. Now, the one at Logan and Cedar is not quite that big, but they do exist. On May 9th of this year, we did discuss the roundabout with the City Council and the concept. And the consensus of the council on a 5-2 consensus vote was for us to move forward with the design of the roundabout. The roundabout adds about $50,000 to this project. I just want to be upfront with you about that, the roundabout itself. But do that in contrast to the fact that to put in traffic signals, we know that they cost at least $138,000 up at the high school entrance. And if you had to do lane configuration with it, and depending upon the types of signals, as much as $150,000. So there's a comparison between the two. In October of this year, last month, we awarded the contract for the Logan Street Culvert Extension, and now our schedule is kind of on a fast-track schedule. It started on October 22nd, last month, where we had to submit our plans to DOT for a 2014 bid letting date, our final plans. They were submitted. They were part of a complete street design. And Tom, to answer your question, I'm not sure if DOT has a complete street policy, but they promote complete street designs all the way. The project's estimated cost, engineers' estimated cost, without contingency. Now, engineers will stand up here and they'll always give you their estimated cost with contingency, but I will not. So without their contingency, it's $3,650,000. And if you remember back in 2011, we said this would cost right around $3,700,000. John, you are now publicly on the spot with your estimate.
I want my contingency.
Yeah. You and every other engineering firm, so. On November 5th, the DOT district engineer finished reviewing the plans and sent them to the DOT's contracts division for bid letting. On December 5th, we will set a public hearing for this project. On December 19th, we will have a public hearing and approve the plans and specifications. January 22nd, we will have a bid letting. February 5th, 6th, we will award the contract. February 20th, approve the contract and bond, and in April, we will be under construction. So that is the plan, a little bit of the history. I'm sure there's more to be written on this as we get into the project, but that is how we've got from where we are to where we are right now. And so at this time, I'll let John visit a little bit about the, or ask John to visit about the roundabout design and answer any other questions you might have regarding the design, and I'll do my best to answer any other questions you may have regarding this project. John?
So, thought I'd start out with just a general overview of the project. Okay, so we have, this street project starts at Hauser on Cedar Street and goes to Parham, a little bit beyond Parham, about a couple hundred feet. It includes a stub up Parham and also down on Logan Street. Some of the highlights are, I'll just list some of them. A trail on the north side from the high school to Parham, 10 feet wide, asphalt. Sidewalks at two different locations on the south side. The first side is from Hauser to Imperial Oaks, and then also from the Y Trail where it exits out onto Cedar over to Parham. And traffic signals at the high school, and intersection and turning lane improvements at every intersection. You know, we've got Hauser Street, High School, West Bay Drive, Imperial Oaks, Logan, Wood Creek, and Parham. All of these intersections will have widened lanes, turning lanes on them where they don't have right now. There's a profile change on Logan that'll decrease the slope of the road and improve the level of service. Here is, so let's talk about the roundabout in detail here. We're adding the roundabout at Logan due to a multitude of reasons. Randy's talked about them here already. We're avoiding stop signs. We won't have traffic signals. We improve pedestrian safety, and it also provides traffic calming. This is a layout of the actual roundabout itself. This configuration was developed among three engineers, myself and Ben Wilkinson from Orson Roundabout Engineering, and Dan Burton and Michael Wallwork from Blue Zones. We all three together helped develop this configuration. Mainly the horizontal configuration was set and the DOT got it approved. And the horizontal configuration is important because it controls the speed of traffic through the intersection, and that's something that the engineers have to get right on the design. That's why you don't just want to, as a junior engineer, as a novice engineer, try and do one of these things. It just won't go right for you. The roundabout has a 120-foot diameter. It's an offset left style, which means that when you come into it, you'll have a right turn, you'll skew to the right, and it helps you control your speed. It slows you down as you enter the roundabout. So this configuration controls or handles cars and trucks. It'll handle semi-trucks. The 55-foot trailer will be able to have his back wheels on the truck apron. All of our fire trucks, our ladder trucks and buses will be able to be handled. Here's a closer look. You can see some of the amenities here. We've got pedestrian crossings on all of the approaches, the west approach, the south approach, and the east approach. you only have to cross one lane of traffic at a time. You look left as you're crossing, and you go from the side to the center island. There's a place to, you have refuge there, and then you cross the second lane. This is considered safer due to the fact that in the other design, you've got 43 feet of open pavement to traverse, and you've got traffic going in both directions, and they are not stopping and they are not slowing down. So this will be a much improved over the T intersection as far as getting pedestrians across the street. Some other amenities, the center will be sod. It will be raised slightly. The DOT doesn't like for you to be able to see directly across it. They like to have the center mounted. You're supposed to be looking ahead and not off your left window as you go around it. There's a truck apron, and that will be colored concrete, 9 inches. The pavement will be 9 inches around where you're driving. The medians will be raised medians and not just painted islands. Those will be red and stamped. There will be a lot of pavement markings here, yellow and white. There's a yield line when you're coming up to the roundabout, dashed line where you're, at that point, you have to yield to any traffic that's on the roundabout. Then you get on it, and then you're free to exit wherever, and everybody else has to yield to you. The city is handling all of the signage on this project versus having that as a bid item on the contract for the DOT. We'll get some help and confirmation from Iowa DOT on all the required signage. It's pretty standard through the MUTCUD DOT manual. There's a retaining wall required on the north side of the roundabout. At the highest point, it's 7 feet high. And the intersection will be well lit. Power and water will have lights on all areas of the intersection. That's the general overview. Is there any questions about the roundabout?
What's the grade going out Cedar Street when you hit the roundabout?
Going out, the natural grade of the existing Cedar Street is right at 5%. It's staying pretty much right at that when you're headed west coming out of the roundabout. It's about 5.1 at that point.
How about you're doing some improvements on Logan? What's the grade coming up to the roundabout on Logan?
Existing, it was 7 to 10% at certain points, and we have modified the design to lengthen the paving on Logan and improve the level of service on Logan. The slopes are now only 4% coming up to and approaching from the south up to the roundabout.
And is those improvements included in the $50,000 cost of the roundabout, or is that in addition to?
That would be in addition to.
Thank you. Okay.
Anyone else, council? Very good. Thank you, John. Thank you, Randy. Item number 8 on tonight's agenda, comments from council, beginning with Councilman Lorette.
Thank you, Mayor. I just remind everyone that this Saturday evening is the Festival of Wreaths, fundraiser for the Arts Center. I'd invite everybody to come down and attend. It's a good time and a great event. Thank you.
Thank you. Phil?
Nothing at this time, Your Honor.
Scott?
I just want to comment to Randy and John that it's very commendable that they were able to get multiple grants on this project. And they don't just land in your lap, so it's a good job.
Very good. Osama?
I have nothing tonight, thank you.
Bob?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Jeanette?
Nothing, thank you.
Tom?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Greg?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
And I have nothing. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Osama? Motion, meeting is adjourned.